You're listening to Building the Broncos with Nick Kendell and Carl Dumler, Broncos country's leading draft and scouting analysts. Head on over to milehighhuddle.com to sound off on all things Broncos.
Hello there, Broncos country, and it is once again time for another episode of Building the Broncos. I am your host, Carl Dumler, and with me, as always, I have my co-host and good friend, Mr. Nick Kendell. Nick, how are things, man?
Things are going pretty well. It's been raining here like crazy, but it looks like the weekend is going to have some good weather, so that's good to look forward to. And the weather's turning, and going to go up to Decorah this weekend. The Hawks play the Badgers. The Broncos are 2-0. It's a good time to be alive.
Oh man, you think the Hawks have a chance?
They are. I think it's a 3.5-point underdog. But I think the Hawkeyes got a chance. They got a really good defensive line. It's not like, an Alabama or a Clemson defensive line, but those are a different tier program than pretty much anybody besides, maybe Georgia and Ohio State. But Iowa's got a really good defensive line for being an Iowa program, and they're going against Wisconsin, who might have the best offensive line. So strength against strength. It's going to be a Kinnick night game, though. So really, it should be a great game. I'm really excited for it.
Yeah, I'm excited to watch that one, man.
Stanford, Oregon, also.
Oh, wow. Yeah, that'll be a good one. Finally, Herbert will have a little bit of competition for once.
Yeah, we will know a lot more about Justin Herbert after this weekend. You don't want to base it on one game, but this, they're not playing Saginaw Valley Children of the Blind Technical College. Like they've been playing some ridiculous schools at Oregon schedule early on.
Yeah.
So we'll see. We'll find out about Justin Herbert. Drew Lock's been playing good. This isn't the draft podcast, but Drew Lock, stock up for Mizzou. Jarrett Stidham, stock down at Auburn. Nathan Stanley, stock down at Iowa. I can say that as a prospect. He looks like he should come back his senior year. And Dwayne Haskins at Ohio State. That's the guy that I'm kind of most intrigued by right now. Just intrigued by. Not my favorite one, but tools are crazy, and he's played 3 pretty good games. So he's one I'm excited about. Yeah.
What do you think about Will Grier?
Will Grier?
Grier, sorry, yep.
I think he's okay, but I feel like it's a lot of chuck 'em ball in a spread 'em out offense. And I don't know if he's got like the arm talent or the stature. Some people kind of want to make him Baker Mayfield. I don't think he's got the same arm talent or the athleticism. So I think he's probably a day 2 player. He could play in this league, but I think he's a day 2 player.
There you go. There's some names to keep an eye on for the upcoming draft, as the Broncos might be looking at quarterback. Maybe we'll see. I know you got a lot of Kelly fans out there, and for good reason. He had a pretty good preseason. And, of course, Case Keenum, we'll talk about him quite a bit. But I want to let you know that Building the Broncos is focused on all things pertain to your Denver Broncos, especially as it relates to the team building, to diagnosing our upcoming opponent, to the NFL draft, to everything possible here. Nick and myself, we're armchair GM/coaches, and we're going to be bringing you a fresh insight and analysis each and every week in every single episode, from scouting the enemy, player value, scheme and personnel fits, of course, and general football-related banter. You can follow myself on Twitter at Carl Dumler MHH, as well as follow Nick at Nick Kendell MHH. And be sure to tweet us any questions or opinions you have, because we live for talking Bronco football. You can also follow the podcast Twitter account at HuddleUpPod, and make sure you check out ours and our co-writers' written content at milehighhuddle.com, a part of 24/7 Sports and an affiliate of the CBS Sports Digital Network. We know you listeners are as football, draft, and Bronco crazy as we are, so please give us a click and subscribe to us on iTunes as well as Stitcher. And don't forget to share us on Facebook and Twitter. We wouldn't be here today without you listeners, so as a call to action, please go and take the time to go to iTunes or Spreaker to rate and subscribe, to let your voices be heard on how you enjoy our show. Now, before we get going, we also want to say thank you real quick to our great sponsor, Audible. Get a free audiobook download and 30-day free trial at www.audibletrial.com/huddleup. They have over 180,000 titles to choose from for your iPhone, Android, Kindle, or MP3 player. Again, that's www.audibletrial.com/huddleup. Well, of course, with each episode, we like to take a second just to look back, and victories always taste a little bit sweeter after the Broncos beat the Oakland Raiders, wouldn't you say?
Oh, absolutely. Hate the Raiders. Probably I dislike the Patriots more because the Raiders have been so inept for a while, and Bill Belichick and Tom Brady are really easy to hate. But gosh darn, anytime you beat the Raiders, it's a good time, even if it's an ugly football game. It matters coming out with that W.
Right, and especially now having Chucky on the other sideline, and I love that they always pan to him after a bad play, and he always has that that face. It's like that bitter beer face every time. And I love it. And I love that he had a lot of that in this game. And so let's talk through, we always like to do a 6-pack of facts from this game. And let's start with Broncos' first down defense versus their third down defense. This was a big frustration and excitement all at the same time in this. On first down, Broncos really seem to struggle. The Raiders love to just pound it with Marshawn Lynch and that inner core, what we talked about last week, that this was going to be a problem. Of their middle or interior offensive line guys are just big. They're strong. They love to get moving downhill in the run game. And they moved our guys, except for one. And we'll talk about him here in just a second. But they definitely got a nice push there, and they'd have a lot of second and third and short plays. And I can't believe that we held them to only 19 points with how well they were running on first down. Yeah, it's a typical staple of many, younger football teams, college programs, that if you run the ball effectively on first down, second down becomes much more of a toss-up. You could run it again, you could do a play action, and then third and short. I mean, that's where you want to be living as an offense. And the Broncos really struggled on first down this week. The Raiders moved the ball effectively. I felt like it was constantly 2nd and 3, 3rd and 1, just over and over again. And that made it easy for Derek Carr. Could he go deep? He didn't have to throw very far. So that really opened up the offense. But then, quote, Dumb and Dumber, just when I thought you couldn't get any lower, you go and totally redeem yourself. The Broncos on third down, I mean, they absolutely shut down the Raiders on third down. They had a fourth down stop as well. That was beautiful. But yeah, it was a great game by the Broncos as far as third down defense goes, and it was a total bend don't break game. So only 19 points, I'll take that every time. Pretty much, I wouldn't say stifling the run game. They were effective on first down, but after that, doing a good job stopping them. So in that second half, I mean, beautiful job by the defense. I kind of have a little bit questions about Joe Woods and some of his play calls there as far as the scheme of the defense, but they kind of did the exact opposite of what we said they should do, which they still won. I guess there's different ways to skin a cat, as they say, which is a horrible saying. Where did that even come from? But it was good to see them hold 19 points, and it was a classic bend don't break defense. But either way, that first down defense, it's got to be better. That really nullified the effectiveness of the Broncos pass rush on that defensive line. They still got it done, but the way you want it, you want third and long, and you want Von Miller, Chubb, Barrett. You want to see that NASCAR package. Shelby Harris out there pinning their ears back and getting after the quarterback, and they couldn't do that this week because the Raiders were so effective on first down. Right, and this is where I think a lot of people get so caught up in stats. And like you said, the 19 points, that's the stat that matters most when it comes to defense. But everybody looks at that 29 of 32 passing, and they're saying, oh, my gosh, that Bronco defense really struggled. And they had their struggles, don't get me wrong. And they definitely played more off than they ever should have. But yet, like you said, it's that bend, don't break. I mean, the Patriots, they have lived by that kind of defense for a very long time. They wait for you to make a mistake. They're not going to give you the big play. They're just going to make you have to dink and dunk the entire way down the field. And especially when it comes to the red zone, they're going to tighten up and really be something good. And for the Broncos, I mean, that was opposite of what they did last year. Last year, they were very good keeping yardage down and all of that, but red zone, they were really, really bad last year. So it's kind of the Broncos seem to have reversed what they wanted to do from last year. I don't really get the game plan considering Carr was not, really effective throwing the ball down the field and giving that much cushion. I'm not sure if it was a game plan issue or if it's a personnel issue. I mean, if you don't trust the linebackers to cover and you don't think you have a cover one or a safety that can play on the deep end and you don't trust your depth at cornerback, you're going to play conservatively on that back end and you're going to give up some yards as long as you stifle and stiffen up in the back end. that can be effective, but it's a question right now that I have. It's between, do they have the horses or is the play calling? So that's something, one game of tape. We'll see. If it becomes a trend though, then that's something we're going to have to question going forward. Something else that I've been thinking about the last couple of days is the Raiders in the first half have been very good. Second half of games, they've been pretty terrible. And I really do think it is a little bit of teams are cautious because they don't exactly know what John Gruden's going to do. Yeah. And so there is some of that playoff. Let's just see what they do, try to keep them out of the end zone as much as possible, and then make second half adjustments. Because, I mean, That's something I had a Raiders fan talking to me about that today of, man, this team, once they get it together, they'll start flying. And I'm like, no, teams are making adjustments and shutting you guys down. I think the more tape gets out there, the Raiders are going to look that much worse. And I mean, Broncos 20 points in the second half. The Rams scored 23 points in the second half. They held them to 0. We held them to 7 points in the second half. So, I mean, it seems like it's a whole different ball game in that second half for the Raiders. And I really do think some of it is just teams get a chance to really see what they're trying to do and are able to shut that down.
And I do think age is a part to do with that as well. You know, just the game, once it goes on, it's a young man's game, and the older guys kind of start to fade, and Raiders are an old team. So, but yeah, it was a good effort. 2019, like we talked about the third down defense, the Broncos held the Raiders for 3 for 10 on third down, which is, 30% efficiency. I'll take that every time. And they also held the Raiders' run game with a great offensive line. And we have questions about the running backs, but a great offensive line to 100 yards on 27 attempts and 3.4 yards per rush. So pretty good job. The pass game could be better. The linebackers were sucked up on play action, and they're letting Amari Cooper do whatever he wanted. Pretty much, they're not getting any press up there, which just blows my mind. But it is what it is. 19 points. You should win almost every game in the NFL if you're only giving up 19 points. So it's a big one. But speaking about the Raiders run game, moving on, the Broncos run game. Man, another week, another great effort by the Broncos on the ground. Absolutely beautiful. Phillip Lindsay, 14 carries, 107 yards. Great game from him. Royce Freeman didn't have as good of a game, but 8 carries, 28 yards, and that touchdown, his first of his career. And Booker actually effective as well. Only 17 yards, but 5.7 yards per carry. That's not the worst. That's what you call making the most of your opportunity. So, not the worst. And the Broncos overall, I mean, they were moving the ball pretty effectively on the ground. Kudos, hats off to the offensive line again. I mean, 168 yards on the ground doesn't just happen. Granted, a big run from Phillip Lindsay, but still, that's great. 168 yards on the ground. You're winning most games. That means you're controlling the flow of the game on the offense. And that really kind of opened up in that second half as well. So got to be a little bit better first down, second down on the Broncos on offense, kind of the opposite of the Raiders. They did okay on third down, but that run game, as long as it keeps going, they're going to give Case Keenum, even though he doesn't have, a great NFL top or even an average NFL arm as far as velocity goes, having a great run game like that and then implementing more and more play action, maybe some movement with Case out of the pocket, I think the offense can get going. But it starts with that offensive line, and Vance Joseph said it's a culture change of this team. He wants to make it a power run team, lean on that running game. And through 2 games, the run game looks pretty good, and those 2 running backs and the offensive line are a huge part of that.
Definitely. And Phillip Lindsay, I mean, I've had some people say, well, why isn't he the starting running back? Right now, he's leading in carries, so even if he's not starting carry 1, he's still a very integral part of this offense. And I don't want him having to go out there and get 30 carries a game. He won't make it to mid-season if that's what they're doing. I love the way they're using him. I love that they're mixing up in the pass game, getting him up the middle, getting him to the edge. They're doing a lot of things with him. Royce Freeman, he had that huge run on 3rd and 1 where he bounced it back out to the outside a little bit and was able to pick it up when the inside was all clogged up. I love that. I love getting to see our guys really produce where, like last year, it was very difficult to see that our run blocking by the offensive line was actually pretty good. I think they were like 10th in yards per carry or yards before contact for the running back. And yet our run game didn't look that great. So the offensive line was doing their job. The running backs weren't. Well, now we actually have running backs that are taking advantage of the offensive line that's actually doing very good. And now there is one injury to keep an eye on for the offensive line. That is Valdir. He's in concussion protocol, and he wasn't at practice today, which usually is not a good sign. That means he hasn't passed the first step of concussion protocol. But there's still time, so we'll just have to see. I thought they did okay without him. Billy Turner was the guy that came in for him, and he did okay. It wasn't perfect, but it was okay. I don't know what they're going to do, if they're going to actually start Billy Turner this week or not. We'll have to kind of wait and see what they decide to do if Valdir can't go. But overall, I thought the pass blocking really struggled in the first half. I felt like they really figured out in the second half what the Raiders were trying to do as a pass rushing unit. They were blitzing like crazy. They blitzed the 5th most in week 2 of any team in the NFL. So very opposite of what the Broncos went against with Seattle, where Seattle hardly ever blitzes. The Raiders were like, you know what, we got to generate a pass rush. And so that's what they tried to do after their first week of just getting pretty much shut down to nothing. And although they got some pressure, like I said, in that first half, second half, Case Keenum was pretty clean most of the game, I would say.
Yeah, he did a pretty good job getting the ball out quickly. Just missed a couple throws out there, and you got to get some of those throws out there that he was missing, but kept pretty clean. So that's good. I'm pretty excited about the offensive line. Hopefully Valdir will be healthy in this game. Turner did well, but they were running pretty well behind him too. But I don't trust him in the pass game nearly as much as Valdir. So we will see about that. So yeah, the Broncos back 7. It's not playing great. We kind of touched on it earlier. Is it a play calling issue? Is it a personnel issue? Do they lack the talent? So far, the good guys have the good, quote unquote, as we would call them, guys have been inconsistent. Roby's been over aggressive and not playing very well, not looking like he's going to get paid a huge contract, although he probably still will because he's young and he has that first round pedigree, which often means cha-ching. And Chris Harris Jr., I got to say, it looks like he's lost a step. He's biting on double moves. I think he's cheating a little bit, and he's given up 2 touchdowns already. Eric did a piece where he charted the cornerback usage and success so far, and Chris Harris Jr. is not playing at an elite level. He's playing like a cornerback 2 right now. Still good, but when you have 2 cornerback 2s out there, that doesn't equal 1. So not great. And even Justin Simmons, I'm a big Justin Simmons fan, but he's showing the reason that he fell to the bottom of the 3rd round because he's got a little bit of tweener to him. He doesn't have the straight line speed that you expect from a cover 1 safety, that back end guy that can cover the whole field and make plays on the ball. Just doesn't really have a tremendous long speed. And then he's also a little bit scrawny and not the best tackler when they're using him as a strong safety or a box safety. So he's been exposed a little bit there, but still those 3 guys are core pieces for the team, and they're good. I mean, if they had better talent around them, I think they would be showing even better. But then the other issues, the linebackers are not doing great in coverage at all. I've ranted on here before. I'm a huge Hawkeye fan. Josie Jewell, love the guy, but his Pro Football Focus quote unquote coverage grade being so high at Iowa has 3,000% to do with the scheme that he was in and how they used him and the discipline he plays with. But he's short and kind of stubby, not a tremendous athlete for the position. And if you're asking him to play man or anything like that, I don't think it's going to go well. And he's been biting very hard on play action so far, which is, he's made some good run stops and everything, but biting very hard on play action. Same with Todd Davis, who's had that hold that negated a Von Miller strip sack that could have changed how the game went. The Broncos they had the ball in plus territory. They could have scored a touchdown there, and then the game's not even close. And Brandon Marshall, too, playing not great. So the linebackers, all of them not playing great right now, especially in coverage. I mean, they've been absolutely caca in coverage. And people are like, oh, why are the Broncos playing zone so much? Honestly, from what I've spoken with the source, is that the Broncos on the outside, the cornerbacks, for the most part, are playing man, but they don't trust the safeties or the linebackers in man coverage. So they're playing an outside man with an inside zone look a lot of time. And when that happens, if those safeties / linebackers are getting sucked up in play action, which is happening time and time again, then you're going to leave the middle of the field wide open. And that's what's happening. The Jared Cook had a couple catches. They held him to check pretty well, but he had a couple catches where there was like nobody around him. It looked like the Hills Have Eyes, or not the Hills, the Sound of Music. The Hills Have Eyes. Yes, horrifying. No, the Sound of Music when she's running around in the hills and like there's nothing for miles and she's gallivanting in the green. And that's what Jared Cook looked like on a couple plays. And then luckily, like the Hills Have Eyes, they closed in on him. But that was not great. And Darian Stewart not playing great as well. And I've just got to say, like, I was excited about how Pac-Man Jones looked 2 weeks ago, but Pac-Man Jones, I was skeptical. There's a reason he was not signed yet. And Tremaine Brock, probably my least favorite signing of the entire offseason. They looked like absolute dog poop this week. So, and I think that's a big reason that Joe Woods is playing so conservatively. He does not trust Darian Stewart back there. He doesn't have that free safety range anymore, and he's biting and not playing super disciplined in zone and even in box. I even saw Will Parks play a deep safety this week. What the heck is going on there? And then the Broncos' 3rd and 4th cornerback not playing great as well. So this team, they know the defensive front is still great, but gosh, that back 7, it's lacking talent right now. And even with the guys that I really like, and Chris Harris Jr., Roby, and Justin Simmons aren't playing great, but the guys that are next to him and behind him, not good. So that's something to look forward to, or watch, not look forward to, but watch going forward.
Well, I hope we can look forward to it eventually as time goes on, and maybe some of these guys get a little rust knocked off them and kind of get a little bit more in sync. I mean, they've been used to having Aqib Talib out there on one side, and so I think maybe some of that leadership in the secondary from him being gone I think some of that's showing up here. And beyond that, like you said, there's just not as much talent as there has been in the past. And even some of the talented guys just are not physically as able to do it. I mean, time catches up with everyone. And like I said, maybe even Chris Harris has lost just a little bit of a step, and that's costing him. And maybe he's trying to do a little too much. He's going, I'm the number one cornerback now. Now I got to really step up, and maybe he's just playing a little bit more tight than he has in the past. So there's still some things definitely to work out. And I don't know if that unit's going to be ever figured out this season. Like I said, maybe it's going to have to be where some infusion of talent is brought in at some point here. Maybe it's going to have to wait till next offseason. I don't know, but it's just not helping the front seven. That's for sure. Yeah. I mean, when they maybe it was, like you said, Joe Woods having to play him off just because he was too afraid of them getting beat with double moves or just not being able to keep up, whatever it may be. But then that negates what the front seven can do. So it's just not playing complementary football right now. All right, well, let's move on to our next point here, and that is the Broncos special teams continues to be special. I mean, not absolutely, let's just go out there and say that they're the number one special teams unit in football, but at least this year they're not costing us games. How many times did we sit here on this show and just about pull out our hair at how bad the special teams unit was? So just to see the Broncos turn this around so much in one season is very, very exciting to see. They don't have an explosive return game. Adam Pac-Man Jones is not going he's lost a step. He's not going to be that explosive guy, but he's consistent. The coverage units have done very, very well. Marquette King, I thought he did very well against his old team. Nothing to really shake my head out at any of his punts. And then, of course, Brandon McManus. He has become our Mr. Clutch, making that, 2 field goals. Again, he misses a field goal, we lose that game. And there was a lot of kickers that lost jobs this weekend because they can't make field goals. And it cost their teams games. So Bronco fans, be very, very excited that the Broncos have right now a very consistent kicker that they can depend on and have them go out there and not sit there and hold their breath in just the hopes that maybe they'll make it. And again, even something else to keep in mind that I think a lot of people forget about this game is the Broncos blocked an extra point.
Yeah.
And those little things, those points, this is how hard it is to win in the NFL. A 1-point game, you can look back on probably 20 different plays in that game and say, this is what cost us that game, at least if you're the Raiders. And for the Broncos, you can look at those 20 plays and say, this is what helped us win this game. And that was definitely one of them. That was something that wasn't really talked about as much as it should have been. That was huge. So special teams, I tip my hat to you once again. I really appreciate just seeing a unit that looks competent. It was so bad last year. I can't believe how bad special teams was. And so just very, very excited that this new coach really seems to have the guys doing their job well.
Yeah, absolutely. The only thing missing from the special teams is dynamic returners. And again, Pac-Man Jones, there was one time in that Raiders game, man, he got absolutely tattooed. So it'd be nice to have a field flipping punt return or kick return. Granted, both games have been a mile high. I don't even remember if there's been a kickoff return yet. Everything's just booted out of the back of the end zone. But punt return, nothing so far. There was one that was okay, but it was called back for a penalty, which sucked. That was week 1, but still good to see the special team, especially McManus and Marquette playing well. And then finally, the fourth quarter of this team. This team right now, they're not quitting. And I'm not, promoting them too much. I'm not riding the horse too high because the Broncos were 2-0 last year and they finished 5-11. The Broncos were, 6-2 after the first 8 games 2 years ago, and they ended up 8-8. So the Broncos started well the last 2 seasons and then totally fell off. So worth monitoring, kind of steadying that horse. But the fourth quarter for this team has been great. 2 fourth quarter comebacks already, and that's more than the last 2 years combined for the Broncos. So that's great. It shows how big of a deal it is having a competent quarterback, having an offensive line that can keep defenses from pinning their ears back, and just believing in a guy and going out there and getting it. And I think also having weapons in the pass game to take advantage of things. Tim Patrick, there was a chance when he turned that ball inside, I was freaking out, but then he turned to the outside and yeah, he's got some jets. He's a big guy, but he's got some jets. So
I was shocked at that speed.
Yeah, it's I think probably probably Demaryius Thomas's last season in Denver, just because not only is it kind of, he's on the downward swing and he's been battling injuries. I think he's got an injury right now. I don't think anybody's talking about it. I think he's injured right now. And the Broncos got Cortland Sutton, Tim Patrick kind of filling in that bigger receiver role going forward for a fraction of the cost. So we'll see.
I think that's something else about that final drive that really stuck out to me is it was not pretty. You really think about it, to start off with a holding call right off the bat, got him to second or first and 20. And then all of a sudden they got the big pass on second down to Emmanuel Sanders. Okay, we're moving the ball, looking good. Then all of a sudden Demaryius Thomas drops a pass that was pretty much, this was going to get us into field goal range, and he drops it. And so you'd kind of think, oh man, that's probably end of the game right there. And then all of a sudden, here comes Tim Patrick with a huge catch. I don't know if it was a smart move or dumb move that just got lucky. I'm still going back and forth on some of that. I've had some that I've listened to that have said that he knew exactly what he was doing. And others, I'm just like, I don't know how you turn that inside with that little time. And, but it worked out. So I guess I shouldn't question it too much right now. But, they came up with the plays when they absolutely needed them. It was not their best effort. That was not an A game by the Broncos by any means.
I thought they played worse. I thought they played worse, and they were lucky to pull out the win. Yeah,
I would say that was maybe a C- in play of that game, and that's maybe being a little bit kind. But I guess that to me is encouraging, that the Broncos don't have to have their best game on both sides of the ball to win a game. I don't know about you, but at least that's a little bit encouraging to me, that the offense can look terrible. The defense can halfway keep them in the game, even though they're not playing their best. And when it comes down to it, they make enough plays to pull it out in the end.
It is encouraging, and that makes me think that they have another gear that they can get to, but they're going to have to get to it, because I do not think that the Seahawks or the Raiders are good teams. So anyway, moving on to our standouts of the game. I got 3. We did 3 and 3 this week because we're getting a little long again. My standouts are Ronald Leary. I thought he had a good game, some good pull blocks. He much improved from week 1, and he was getting to the second level well and pass blocking well. So Ronald Leary, getting that cohesion, getting that rust off, because he didn't play much preseason. He played a good game. Jake Butt, best game as a Bronco so far. That's not hard to say, but I thought his blocking was better. He had a couple good blocks where he was in the backfield even and kind of stuck a guy. Jeff Hireman's the better blocker still, but wasn't as bad. And he made a couple great clutch plays. I mean, he had made some yak yards even, which from the tight end, gosh, when's the last time the Broncos have gotten yak yards from a tight end? It's been forever. And then Shaq Barrett, I thought he was in there. He played a good game. There's a couple plays where I saw him playing off-ball linebacker too, which I thought was really interesting. Kind of the Broncos should have 4-3 front with Barrett being what looked like the Sam. And he also had that block kick. So those are my 3 standouts, and I'll save my superstar for the game ball.
All right. Well, I think I might have put your superstar. I'm sorry.
Oh, you did?
I did. Sorry. I had Phillip Lindsay, of course. I mean, his big playability is just something that is to behold. And I told you after I saw the play, I knew he was fast, but I mean, he just made some guys look like they were in slow motion. And just his cuts that he made, you talked about his balance, his ability just to, a guy tried to make an arm tackle on him, and here he is staying up on his feet, still going full speed. And then I went with Connor McGovern, the other offensive guard for us here. I mean, this guy, he's really turned up another notch this season. And the run game behind him has just been fun to watch. It's like he finally grew into his body. I mean, this guy has been strong, like weight room strong, but he's now becoming football strong. And I love seeing it. And it's something that the Broncos definitely needed for him to take that next step. And I'll keep my third one off because I want to save it for your game ball. But I'll go to my letdowns here. And this is one that we both have on our lists, and I think he deserves to be on both lists, and that's Demaryius Thomas. I mean, it was just that bad of a game. I don't know if I've seen Demaryius Thomas have a worse game than this one. He almost cost us the game. Really, his drops should have cost us that game. And so when he is your top paid receiver, he's been your number one for how many years? He's been team captain for the last couple years on the offense. And yet here's the guy that's just not stepping up. And honestly, right now, I would say not only has Sanders passed him as a better receiver, Cortland Sutton is one I think has passed him as a better receiver. And I know I'm not going to sit here and say bench Demaryius Thomas, but I think there's got to be some tough conversations had with him of, hey, we need you. We can't have this kind of game and expect to be a playoff team. And if you can't step up, we got other young guys that are ready to go and showing something for us. I mean, Cortland Sutton, he looks like he's just about ready to break out for a big game. He's been so close on so many big plays that just have been negated by just different things. And so I'm waiting for him just to really explode onto the scene. But then my next guy is Derek Wolfe. I thought he got pushed around like crazy in this one. And my third one, a little bit here, Joe Woods. I just even Joseph called him out on his Monday press conference, kind of saying that defensive play calling was not up to par. So definitely needs to step up. I mean, we let one of the better defensive coordinators in football go because we thought this guy was going to be that next great defensive coordinator. So far, can't say I'm really seeing it.
Yeah, it's apparently I've heard it's more an execution issue on that one with the issues in that first half, and they kind of tightened it up in that second half, which, I mean, they did play better in that second half, but still, I don't really understand the calls, the soft coverage with Derek Carr there. But that's life. And my letdowns this week, again, I had Demaryius Thomas. I don't know if I'm ready to put him worse than Cortland Sutton. Less athlete, but he's still a good route runner, but you got to clean those hands. And like I said, I think he's playing injured. I really do. I think he's got an injury, and I wouldn't be surprised to see him, if he is injured, don't hide it. Don't get him out there for, because he's the vet. Get him 100% healthy. It's going to be better for the Broncos down the stretch if he's healthy, and then he maybe can get some of these young guys some experience. And Adam Jones and Tremaine Brock, I already kind of piled on them earlier. Not great games, both letdowns, and I think they're going to be continuously targeted going forward. And then linebacker coverage, again, talked about earlier in my rant about the back seven, just not good. They're biting on play action, and teams are going to continue to do it and throw it over the top to the tight ends. Because if you're linebacker, I mean, they're doing a good job against the run. I'll give them that, but they're going to be continuously picked on over the middle. And it's been a while since the Broncos have used a premium resource on linebacker, whether it be a contract or they paid Brandon Marshall a decent contract, not Todd Davis. His contract's middling. But they might need an injection there in the upcoming draft or something, because they just are continuously getting beat over the middle, and they don't got the horses since they've had Danny Trevathan and Brandon Marshall at a younger, healthier style that can play that middle of the field in coverage. So that's the negatives. But moving on, the positive, the biggest positive, my game ball, Domata Peko Jr. Gosh, that dude, I sent you some of I like to send Carl my tape that I record from my phone, the terrible grained footage, but I can still get an idea of what's going on Facebook. And man, Domata Peko, I said it when I tweeted it out. I did a film article on him, and his feet might be as sweet as his hair. That dude, they tried cut blocking him a few times, and he's dancing around. He's keeping his balance. He jumped Kelechi Osemele on a play and got in the backfield. I mean, that's a 325-pound dude that's 33 years old, and he's out there dancing around like a big bear. So what a great game from him. Not a great pass rusher, never really been that. He did have 5 sacks one of his later years in Cincinnati, but still, that's not really his role. But he did a good job, especially considering how good that interior trio is for Oakland. And he's a great player. They mentioned I think John Harbaugh talked about it today as well, and they mentioned it on the broadcast, how good he is against the screen. I mean, he was pretty much in coverage on that screenplay where he made that play in space and tackled the running back behind the line of scrimmage. So, Peko, have yourself a game. I know he's going to be a free agent in the offseason. I know he's older, but I'm enjoying him right now, and I'm not sure if he'll be in the future. But, man, he's a great player and even a better guy. Yeah,
I love interviews with him.
Yeah.
He always has, the biggest smile on his face, and it's just I'm loving life. And he is such a fun player for us to have for sure. So I love having him on the team. And like you said, he had to be the MVP of that game. I mean, those 3rd and 1 plays that he was there making the play, that was so big for the Broncos. That game could have got out of hand if he wasn't having the game of his life. But my game ball goes to Case Keenum. I know through that interception, he's got to clean that up.
In the red zone.
In the red zone, yes. That was downright terrible. But I love the fight of this kid. I mean, he does something like that, and then he makes up for it. he goes out there and makes a play that the team absolutely needs. 3rd and 3, he runs an RPO and runs for the first down and takes a big hit. And then 4th and 1 at the goal line, they run a draw play with him. And I just love that. I mean, he's confident in himself, which can be good and bad at the same time. He's late on some throws, which I think that's just a little bit of timing of understanding what's going on with some of his players. Like Demaryius Thomas, he just doesn't have great timing with him. I would say with the other receivers on the team, he has great timing. Demaryius Thomas, I don't know why they can't seem to get on the same page, but he makes the plays that you absolutely need. And he doesn't seem to get down. Something bad happens, something goes wrong, and boom, he's still out there showing confidence, making his team believe. And that's just something the Broncos haven't had in a long time. I mean, it used to be what quarterback threw an interception. Everybody just thought, game over. Game is done. And right now with Case Keenum, he throws an interception. The offense is like, all right, let's get back out there. Let's go score. So, again, things to clean up, but definitely some things that are very, very encouraging. And I still feel very confident that this team can be a playoff contender with Case Keenum right now.
Yeah, as long as the offensive line and the run game keeps going, I'm honestly more concerned. It's Case Keenum in the offense. I do think he's still the limiting factor for the offense. And, if they had a better quarterback, then the offense could be top 10. They still might end up but we'll see. They, 2 games in against some not great defenses, despite what Seattle's reputation's been recently. Yeah, but it's the back 7 that's got me worried, as obviously by my rant. Now, ever since we started this podcast, people have been asking us for advice. Usually it's about this upcoming matchup or a draft prospect that fits the Broncos or which teams are going to win this upcoming week. The truth is, we don't know who's going to win. But if you think you got to check out MyBookie. Remember, who you're betting on is just as important as who you're betting with. That's why I always tell people to bet with MyBookie. Trust me, guys, they are the best bet this season. They've been in business for years, have great online reviews, and their mobile site is easy to use. I'd recommend this service to my listeners because they've always been good to me, and that's why I'm urging you to make your way to MyBookie. You win, and they pay. MyBookie is slammed with new bettors and wants to give everyone the best service possible. If you're willing to deposit after 7 p.m. today, Eastern Time, they'll give you an additional $25 free to play on deposits over $100. Join now and MyBookie will match your deposit dollar for dollar. Once again, if you're willing to hold out until after 7 p.m., you get an extra $25 free to play using the promo code Broncos125. It's up to you guys, but I'd wait until after dinner and take the extra money if I were you. You play, you win, and you get paid. All right, well, moving on, the Scouts Eye preview for the 2-0 Denver Broncos versus the 1-1 Baltimore Ravens. And the Ravens are coming off a loss against the Bengals on Thursday Night Football. So, unfortunately, they've had a good long amount of time, about as long as you can get without a bye week, to prepare for this game and rest up and get healthy. But they're not super healthy right now. They actually had a pretty serious injury. The official injury report isn't out yet, but C.J. Mosley has been sidelined. He had a knee injury. Apparently it was bone to bone, and he's listed as week to week. So you got to watch out for that. C.J. Mosley, they look like a totally different defense without him. I wouldn't say he's their best player on defense, but I think he's their most important. He's their general. He's one of the better linebackers that Nick Saban's had at Alabama, and he's not, the athlete that Reuben Foster is. But, man, he's such a heady player, great player, and he's been there for a bit. And if he's out, that middle of the defense is going to be somewhat concerning for them, I'd say. They've also had some other injuries. Kennedy's out. That they don't have the Jimmy Smith, the former from Colorado, is not playing. So it's going to be interesting. It's going to be interesting to see. And also, I believe Hurst is injured. He has his foot. He won't return practicing this week, so they're low at tight end. So they're kind of banged up. The Broncos, not as injured. That's good. Case Keenum was on the injured report today, but he's supposed to practice tomorrow, so that would be interesting to see. Chad Kelly's first game, I would be predicting a loss if that was going to happen. I know he's fun, but, man, I see some turnovers galore happening with that Ravens defense if that happens. But they're kind of banged up. Solid team, 1-1, but they're not – I wouldn't say they're an elite team. I wouldn't – even though the Steelers are in disarray in the AFC North, I would say that the Ravens are more the second or third best team in that division if I had to pick. Just to give you an update, right now, at least today, C.J. Mosley, Hayden Hurst – defensive tackle Willie Henry, and running back Alex Collins all set out. And then limited for them were Matthew Judon and offensive tackle Ronnie Stanley were both limited today. Those are good players. Yeah, and for the Broncos, Adam Jones, Brandon Marshall, and Case Keenum all sat out.
And looks like that was it. But the Broncos are hopeful all 4 players that have been injured will actually be able to go. Oh, Valdir, sorry. He's the other one that I forgot, did not practice. But they are actually hopeful that he could actually go.
Well, that's good. And I'm curious because Chris Harris Jr., I heard some rumblings that he was a little bit dinged up after that hit in the red zone where he got hit with Justin Simmons. So good to see that he's not listed. Definitely.
So there you go. That's the updated injury list for Wednesday. Remember, this is we're doing this on Wednesday, so it's kind of early in the process, but we always want to get this out to you so you get a little time to listen and prepare for the Broncos' upcoming game. And yeah, the Bengals, I mean, they got some young pieces, but they also got some very aging pieces on this team. Terrell Suggs, Michael Crabtree's getting up there a little bit more in age. Brandon Carr's up there in age. Eric Weddle, Tony Jefferson. So they have some older pieces, but I would agree. I think they're about a middle of the road kind of team from watching them. You'd think after week 1, when they just blew out Buffalo, that they just were maybe the world beaters that were just going to be that dark horse team, and then came into Thursday against Cincinnati and kind of came back down to earth. And this is, I guess, always the fun part of the first 4 weeks of the NFL is you just never quite know what a team is. I mean, there's maybe a few teams, but even you look at Pittsburgh, are they exactly what we thought they were going to be? Did anybody expect them to be winless right now, 2 games into the season? And so this is a good first matchup on the road for the Broncos.
Well, I agree with you totally, and I'm just bummed that they got to play Thursday night before we play our first road game. That having that extra time to get healthy and prepare is normally a pretty big bonus. So there's a reason the Broncos, I think the spread is 5, favoring the Ravens. So normally an away game is 3 points. So on a neutral field, the Ravens would be favored by 2. That's what Vegas thinks. Not me. I do think the Ravens are the better team right now with the effect of having that time to prepare and everything like that. But on paper, not a great team. I don't think they have a great offense. They don't got great weapons. Crabtree, like you said, is older. The offensive line is solid. I mean, they might have one of the best guards in football over the last decade in Marshall Yanda. Go Hawks. But overall, it's not a great team, and it's a solid defense, but not amazing.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. Watching their game, I thought their tackles, especially against Cincinnati, seemed to struggle a little bit. Especially early in the game, they got beat quite a bit. Tight end there with Hayden Hurst out. They got some talent, but nothing crazy. Joe Flacco, he's an okay quarterback. He has a cannon for an arm. He can launch it down the field, but I wouldn't say he's anything too special. Alex Collins at running back, he's okay, but nothing special again.
And dinged up
defensively. Well. Brandon Williams, that's a good player there. And Terrell Suggs, I mean, even though he's older, he's still a pretty good player. And like I said, CJ Mosley, if he's missing, that is going to be something to keep an eye on.
Totally different defense.
It is.
He's the most important player on the defense. I don't know about the best. Suggs may be a Hall of Famer. They got Brandon Williams, who's just an absolute tank, and Eric Weddle, borderline Hall of Famer. But if CJ Mosley's out, he's their general. He's the signal caller. He gets them in the right spot. He gets them lined up. He's the checker. And I mean, who do they have behind him right now? Chris Board, the college free agent. Kenny Young, the 4th round pick. Zadarius Smith. I mean, I know they just signed Albert McLennan as well. So, man, if CJ Mosley's out, I'm feeling much better about this game for the Broncos because he's not the best linebacker in football, but man, he's up there. He's got to be top 5 as far as an off-ball linebacker goes.
I would completely agree with that. He's very underrated. He doesn't get talked about as much as he should for what he brings to a team. And so we'll just have to really keep our eye on that. I'd definitely keep an eye on that injury list for any of you listeners out there. Of course, Mile High Huddle will keep you up to date on all of that. But let's talk about some key matchups on the Broncos offense versus the Ravens defense. What are some key matchups that you're going to keep an eye on here?
Well, for me, again, it's got to be. It's if C.J. Mosley's out. We already talked about that. Broncos should utilize the middle of the field. The Ravens blitz a lot. At least they have so far this season. And if Mosley's gone, I think there could be some chance for some miscommunication in the middle of the field. So look for some quick passes to the tight end. Maybe get Jake Butt some more chances for yak yards. And I'd also like to see the Broncos use the running back a little bit more in the pass game. If the Ravens are being aggressive and sending guys. What's great when you have a good athletic offensive line? You can get those guys in space and use the screen game. I mean, can you imagine Philip Lindsay after he's already gotten through the offensive line with some blockers in front of him, with just a few linebackers and safeties in front of him? I mean, good night.
Yeah, that's a touchdown. Yeah, that's definitely over. I'm very interested in Marlon Humphrey versus Emmanuel Sanders because they are about opposite of what you would want. You got a big, strong cornerback that loves to play press man coverage, and he's not the fastest guy. So if he gets beat off the line, you can definitely take advantage of that. And they love to play their cornerbacks very aggressively. We're going to talk about that a little bit more in the game plan mode. But I think that's going to be a key matchup for the Broncos that they can really take advantage of, that they're going to leave those two one-on-one against each other. And I like Emmanuel Sanders' chance to win that matchup.
Yeah, he's just so quick and twitched, and he did not have nearly enough targets last week. I know they're trying to feed DT and get that going, but you got to go with the hot hand, and Emmanuel Sanders has been just so much more effective so far, so got to go with that. Another key matchup, it's got to be the Broncos defensive line versus the Ravens offensive line. Like we talked about, the Ravens have a pretty good offensive line. Marshall Yanda is good. Ronnie Stanley, even though he's dinged up, is good. Alex Lewis is pretty good. Matt Skura, I don't think he's the best, and I don't think James Hurst is the best either. So I'm excited to see Von Miller, hopefully there on that right tackle side, attacking them. And then the interior offensive line for the Broncos, or the defensive line, that is. They didn't have the best game pass rushing last week, but Joe Flacco, he's a vertical thrower, and I think they're going to have much more 5-7 step drops. And that means the offensive line for the Ravens is going to have to hold, and it's going to give the Broncos defensive line a chance to get after the quarterback. And hopefully the national media will start paying attention to Von Miller again instead of this Mac parade that's going on with Chicago, where he's already been announced Defensive Player of the Year.
I was going to say, how has he not been announced that already with how much they're talking about him?
I know he's great, but I'm a little bit envious. I know it's the big media thing, and it's new and it's exciting, and Chicago Bears fans are exciting, and it's Chicago compared to Oakland or / Denver. But Von Miller is, I believe, leading the NFL in sacks. Haven't seen anybody talk about that, and he had a strip sack negated as well. So yeah, kind of annoying.
Yeah, I agree. No, this is kind of almost the opposite. I guess we can get into game plan mode here. This is a very opposite team of what the Broncos just played in the Raiders. This is not a quick hit kind of offense. This isn't going to be a Derek Carr completing 90% of his passes. They're going to try to beat the Broncos deep on some plays. I think I watched in that Cincinnati game, about every third or fourth pass seemed to be at least 20 yards or further down the field. And so this is one of those, the Broncos can definitely get home. That pass rush, they're going to have some big opportunities in this one, and I'm excited to see what happens here. I think Joe Flacco is going to get a little bit beat up, and when he throws it deep, he does leave it very open for turnovers. Bronco fans, we should have a pretty good idea on who Flacco is. I don't even want to talk about it. Nope. Never mind. I'm not going to go there. Sorry.
Raheem Moore. Moving on.
But he does like to go deep. And so this is that great opportunity for the pass rush just to go crazy. I look for, especially a guy like Shelby Harris, to be able to have a really good game there on the inside going against their left guard, who's, he's decent, but he's not anything that I would say and say, oh my gosh, this guy's going to be tough to beat. Like last week we had Osemele, and that's a tough guy to beat.
Yeah.
So I definitely like our game plan opportunity of getting home to Flacco. And then they like to run a lot of power straight up the middle. They don't have the get to the edge kind of guys like a Philip Lindsay for their running back position, but they like to pound it with Alex Collins. Javarius Allen is another.
Buck Allen, better known as.
Buck Allen, there you go. Yeah. But even there, they haven't really done too much. Each of them are averaging 3 yards or less per carry. They haven't had a great run game, I would say, at this point for the Ravens. So you can get them into a lot more third and long situations and let that pass rush have an opportunity to get home.
Yeah, for sure. And the one last thing, key matchup, game plan mode, everything like that. Let's talk about Joe Flacco going deep. The guy that the Broncos need to not let them beat them this week is John Brown, former wide receiver from Arizona. And he had sickle cell issues. I don't know if you got probably fantasy people out there. If you've had him on your team, it's kind of been frustrating because he's always had a lot of talent, but just never was able to get it together. But he's still got tremendous speed. And with the vertical throwing ability that Joe Flacco has, John Brown can score an 80-yard touchdown at any moment.
Right.
So he's scary. You can't let him beat you over the top.
He's averaging 19.4 yards per catch.
Ugh.
That is nuts. And he already has 2 touchdowns, and both those have been pretty deep touchdowns. So, definitely a guy that you can't let get over the top. If you're going to play off-man coverage, this is maybe that game to actually play that.
I was just going to say that. Yeah, it's like this. I think they were prepping for this week because John Brown, he's legitimately one of the better vertical deep threats in the entire league. So, yikes, don't let him beat you. But on defense, or when the Broncos are on offense, the Ravens are on defense. We kind of talked about it a little bit earlier, but the Ravens have been very aggressive, and they've been sending a lot of blitzes. So quick passes over the middle, crossers, screens, even wide receiver screens. Maybe that's a way to get Demaryius Thomas going early because he's showed that he can be pretty effective after the ball's in his hands. He's not the athlete that he used to be, but still he can make some things happen when the ball's in his hands. So give him some easy ones early, and if they're looking like they're sending pressure, audible into a screen look. And then also if CJ Mosley's out, I would be picking on whoever is replacing him because the Ravens do not have incredible off-ball linebacker depth. So attack the middle of the field, use those tight ends, use the running backs, and Emmanuel Sanders as well needs more targets. He's the best wide receiver on the team right now. You got to feed the beast. That's the only way to do it. I heard he went to Vance Joseph at halftime and he says, "Vance, I got no targets yet. What's going on?" And he's like, "We'll change that." And he still only had like 4 targets in the game, but he almost had 100 yards. So Time to feed Emmanuel Sanders. He looks like he has great chemistry, and you got to dial some stuff up for him. 11 targets for DT and only 5 receptions and 3 drops. That's unacceptable. I understand you're trying to get him going, but you got to go with the guy who's producing, and right now that's Sanders. Right.
Also in the run game, I'm one that's going to be attacking the edges.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to be looking at the Ravens like to overload. They like to run that A-gap blitz, and they like to overload a side. That's the other thing that they like to do in their blitzes. Well, run away from it. You got usually good numbers on the other side, and you got fast enough running backs that can outrun the blitzers from the other side. And boom, you got yourself some numbers. You got yourself some guys that can make people miss, and you got yourself a big gain. So those are use their aggressiveness against them. And then I'm using a lot of boot action. We talked about it, you, me, and Eric, about how they need to get Case Keenum on the move. He is great outside the pocket. That looks where I think he's most comfortable when he's outside the pocket, where he's not trying to look over those offensive linemen, and he's just able to see the field how he wants to see it. I love it. And then he's got the ability to take off running if he wants to. We saw it in this last game. He's got some decent athleticism. He's not the most athletic guy. He's not going to be a Lamar Jackson like the Ravens have. He's not going to be a Cam Newton or anything like that, but he's got enough that it's a threat that you have to worry about it. And so again, using that aggressiveness where you boot off the play action and boom, you might have a big play down the field. So I think the Broncos have some opportunities, but also with that aggressiveness, something to keep in mind is that can lead to some turnovers. Yeah. So Case Keenum, if the Broncos are going to stand a chance to win this game, Case Keenum can't throw interceptions. Any game you're going to say that, but especially in this one with how aggressive they are, they're looking for a big play on defense.
And with the safeties of Eric Weddle and Tony Jefferson, 2 of the more ball savvy safeties in the entire league. Those guys will take the football away in a hurry. The Ravens do have a negative turnover differential right now, which is interesting. They're actually worse than the Broncos. They're at -3 compared to the Broncos at -1, even though technically I would say the Broncos are more like -2 because that Russell Wilson interception was, that shouldn't even count. But
right.
Still, that's the Broncos got to protect the football better. And when you're running the ball like they are, you need to protect that back 7. Don't turn the ball over. Gosh darn it. I understand you're trying to make plays, but play within yourself, and no red zone turnovers, especially if you're taking points off the board, then you're not doing your job. So I'm very frustrated with the turnovers. And there was a couple throws Keenum didn't have. The fourth quarter is great. And it doesn't mean that I'm not happy about him being better than what they've had for the last 2 seasons, but I'm also not settling it either. I'm going to call it out as I see it. So that's probably why you guys are here as well, listening right now. Just no BS, just calling it as I see it. So finally, the X factor for this game, kind of talked about it. It's the Ravens secondary for me. They got some good cornerbacks, Brandon Carr and Marlon Humphrey. Although I will say Taven Young did not play great against the Bengals. So if Taven Young, if you got somebody going against him, he's their nickelback, whether it be Sanders, Sutton, anybody, throw it to whoever Taven Young's guarding, because there's a big drop off between those first 2 and him, kind of like the Broncos between the first 2 and to Adam Jones and Tremaine Brock. But anyway, got to watch out for the secondary. I think this is the X factor, and Tony Jefferson and Eric Weddle, they will make you pay if you throw some soft BS up over the middle between a linebacker, a cornerback, and a safety. They will come over and take it away like it's nothing. So got to watch out for the secondary of the Ravens and the turnovers that they can create. And that is my X factor.
Mine, I'm not going to say that this is the low-hanging fruit, but it really is the rushing attack. You think first road game, you're going to have a hostile crowd going against you, and you don't want to turn the ball over. They're an aggressive team, all those things, and you don't want to get into third and long plays. That's the other big thing here. But I think the rushing attack, the Broncos can really get that run game going early in this game. I'm going to like their chances a lot better. That run game can take the crowd out of it. When they're having to keep cheering on 2nd and short, 3rd and short, and then they see the team pick up another first down, it just kind of takes the crowd out of it. And it shortens the game too. That's the other big thing, is it keeps it close and gives you some opportunities, and it helps the offensive line. On the road, it's kind of hard to always be having to fire backwards. When the other team's watching the ball, you're having to watch the ball. It just makes things a little bit harder for the offensive line. So if they can fire forward and attack, it just really helps them. And then it slows down the pass rush. There's just so much that happens if the run game gets going. And the Broncos, I think I would lean on that even more this week. I would just keep pounding that ball and just them run play action off it. It seems simple. It's a simple game plan, but I think it's one that can really work with what the Broncos have on offense.
I can't disagree. All right, now prediction. I actually have the Ravens winning this one. I think the Broncos are going to kind of come back down to earth here, with the Ravens having more time to prepare and the Broncos not playing their best football the last 2 weeks, eking out some wins. And I have the Ravens winning this one 28-17. I think that it's a closer game than the score indicates here, but the Ravens score a touchdown late and kind of put this one away.
All right, I'm going to go homer here. And I'm going to have Broncos 28, Ravens 20. I feel like the Broncos have been close, but just not quite putting it all together yet. And I just think that this is one of those games. Sometimes going on the road actually brings a team that much more closer together. You don't have anything else to do but hang out with your teammates. And I think this is one of those games where we might see the offense really explode and get an early lead for once and just keep holding on to it and stifling Joe Flacco. I think Flacco's going to throw a couple picks in this one, and Broncos end up holding on 28-20.
All righty, well, we're just about to get out of here, but before we do, let's tell you about why you need to become a Mile High Huddle VIP subscriber. Mile High Huddle's approach to covering the Broncos isn't just about reporting the news, although we do pride ourselves on being able to relay you all the breaking news on the Broncos as it's happening in real time. But what we like to focus on is breaking down the Broncos from an in-depth perspective. All 22 film reviews, X's and O's, player evaluation on deep dives, et cetera, from free agency to the draft to the guys already on the roster. We save our best and most in-depth content for our premium members, the VIP subscribers. To become a Mile High Huddle VIP and get access to 100% of our written analysis and VIP insider forums, just click on the green banner on the top of the website. Click the monthly or annual option and you'll be locked in. From there, you get access to everything we produce, which includes any insider information we pick up along the way. We work hard to bring you the best Broncos coverage and analysis on the web. We ask you for your support by becoming a VIP subscriber. Pull the trigger, and you have my word, you won't be disappointed. And like I mentioned, I have a Damata Pecco piece out there right now from the last game, and I'm going to do a film article once a week now along with something else with the deal I got with working out with Chad right now, the boss man. But I'm going to be bringing you content. Eric Trickle, Carl, everybody out there is going to be bringing you content. So it's a good time to get into Mile High Huddle and be a VIP. That's going to wrap up this week's episode of Building the Broncos. You can find Carl on Twitter at Carl Dumler MHH and myself at Nick Kendell MHH. Also, make sure you head on over to Mile High Huddle, a new affiliate of 24/7 Sports and the CBS Sports Digital, to find ours and our co-writers' articles related to the Denver Broncos. Head over to iTunes and leave us a 5-star rating and comment. Your comment and support can help us continue to bring you our Denver Bronco deep dives. We aren't just here to bring you the news, but an in-depth analysis each week from team building, game planning, and 365 days of covering this team. You can follow the Building the Broncos podcast and all our other great audio content by subscribing to the Huddle Up podcast on iTunes and for Android users, Stitcher, as well as check us out on YouTube. You can follow us on Twitter at Mile Huddle and at Huddle Up Pod. Again, please be sure to subscribe and rate us and reach out to us as we love interacting with fellow Bronco fans. For Carl Dumler, I'm Nick Kendell, wrapping up another episode of Building the Broncos podcast. We hope you enjoyed it. We will see you once again next week. Go Broncos.
You've been listening to Building the Broncos. Join Broncos Country's deep divers at milehighhuddle.com to keep the conversation going.